Hey everyone, and thanks for tuning in to the Nitro RCX tutorial section. Today we're going to be showing you how to adjust the brakes on the A-Scale vehicle. This tutorial will apply to all the cars and trucks with the center differential system. It should also apply to the Mad Bash, Mad Code, Mad Warrior, and Mad Fire. So it's pretty simple to adjust. We're going to show you how the brake works, how to adjust it, and the effects of front and rear brake bias performance. So let's go ahead and get to it. The first thing you need is a 1.5 millimeter hex wrench. Basically that's to adjust the collets on your brakes. I'm going to go ahead and remove the air filter so you can get a clear picture of the brakes. This is your center differential. These are the brake cams that actuate the brakes. This pushes the brake pads or clamps them down on the brake rotor down here. Basically this top one's going to be for the rear. This bottom one down here is going to be for the front. And when you turn on your vehicle, you'll notice that when you hit the brakes, these two rods or linkages pulls on these brake cams, and that gives you brakes. Now if they're too loose, you're going to have poor braking performance. If they're too tight, you're going to lock up your brakes real early and lose control. So you want to do is kind of get a perfect balance for the brakes, and depending on how you drive, you can either dial in more front brake bias or more rear brake bias. If you do dial in more front brake bias, you'll get more straight line braking traction. If you put too much brakes in the rear, when you're entering a corner, it will be a lot easier to spin out. It really all depends on how you like to drive your car. So I'm just going to go ahead and do an even brake bias for front and rear. So the first thing I'm going to do, right now you'll notice that when I pull the trigger to brake, if I just want a little bit of brakes, I have no brakes. So I'm going to dial in a bit more brakes so that it's a little more sensitive to my inputs. That way I have more of a range of braking. I can modulate the brakes more instead of the brakes just being on and off. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen these collets right here. This is for the rear brake. Again, I have my 1.5 millimeter wrench. I'm going to go in there and kind of just move it in a tad and tighten it. I'm going to go ahead and try operating the brakes again. Now that when I pull a little bit, I can feel the rear starting to grab, and if I want it to lock up, I can just pull that extra like 1/4 of an inch so that it locks up. I'm going to do the same for the fronts. Down there, that collet is for the front brake. That's again is pulling on the front brake cam to clamp onto the front brake rotor. I'm going to move that in just a little more, just like I did to the top one. And tighten that down. Make sure you guys use some Loctite on here because they can loosen over time. And nothing's worse than having an A-Scale nitro car going full speed and having no brakes. So you do want to make sure those are tight. Alright, so I have those two cams, or those two collets moved in further. I'm going to try my brakes. They feel a little more sensitive now. And now it's not like I have only an on or off situation. I have a little bit more brake modulation, so I get better braking performance. Now is also a good time to check your rotors. Down here are your rotors. If you see any big gashes or marks on them, it's probably a good idea to change them. If they're all dark or blackened, contaminated with fuel, that'll also be a good time to change them out. These pads are still nice and green and clean, so that indicates my brakes are still in great condition. Alright guys, so that's how you adjust the brakes on the A-Scale vehicle. Remember, this applies to almost all RCs with the center differential system and with the brakes on the front and rear of that differential. Just remember guys, you can always adjust front and rear brake bias, and that will change how your car handles and reacts during braking. So my suggestion is to play with the settings and see what you're comfortable with and start tuning from there. So thanks for watching guys, and stay tuned for more videos on NitroRCX.com.